Doing marvelous? I sure hope so. We're gonna go over nutrition with as it relates to women and children. I wanted to go over this one because now I don't really like to assume a whole lot, but if I had to levy a guess, I would say a good amount of women already know what it is that I'm about to go over. But for my ladies out there that may be listening, this one's definitely for you. This video here is going to sort of cover, nutrition as it relates to, women in general. But a good portion of this is going to cover reproductive age women in a sense. Nutrition plays a big part from, conception all the way till our end. Okay, so but I want to start with essentially conception, and work our way up to, once the baby is born and, they turn into children and grow and things like that. Since I'm talking about women and children, if you notice anything about the colors that I decided to use, I wanted to go ahead and do that just to kind of, get that little play on, for those of y'all that may be listening and are looking to have children, or, or maybe pregnant listening to me, maybe you know what the sex of the baby is, but in case you don't, I wanted to go ahead and sort of use the pink and the blue as a visual aid. I'm gonna start with I'm gonna go to this side. Now I have this split. The left side is gonna be the women essentially, and it may have some children in there, that I'm gonna talk about, but on the right side will be the children, right? Now there's not as much on this side for children because I'm kind of gonna ad lib a little bit when I get to this side. But starting on the left though, so first I want to start off with what the studies show. Okay, now studies do show that disproportionately women and children are the ones that are affected the most by malnutrition as well as undernutrition. Okay, and this is especially true for developing countries. I mean, it's even true here in the US, right? But in developing countries, they face it a lot worse. My next bullet, I wanted to use India as an example. And why? So in India, right, even though their economy is on a rapid growth, right, it's on a rapid rise, so to speak, women essentially still suffer because of their status, if you want to call it, to that of boys and men, right? Their status isn't really as held in high regard as boys and men. So unfortunately, like in places like India and other developing nations, women essentially are still towards the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to nutrition and, just resources in general to be able to feed their families and make decisions and things like that, which is why the UNDP, which is the United Nations Development Program, they've sort of prioritized empowering women in ways that will help them make better decisions, in the household and even out when they're outside the household. But as it relates to nutrition, right, oftentimes, that the US, maybe not so much. I mean, in some cases that's still true, but in developing nations, oftentimes the women are looked to, for food, right? They're looked at, for meals in the house, right? It makes it difficult for them to make decisions, to go out and get the nutritious foods that they need in order to feed not just themselves, also nourish their husbands and to nourish, their children, okay? So the UNDP has prioritized that, empowering women in that way to help them make better decisions. It's a little bit of a reminder. I did speak on this in a previous session, but I wanted to bring this reminder back up, for obesity. Okay. Now, specifically, the women in my community, okay, that being Black women, they face obesity at the highest rate. Now, I wrote here, I wanted to make sure I talked about why. So the biggest two reasons that, Black women essentially face obesity at the highest rate have to do with undereducation, basically lack of education, or maybe even miseducation in certain cases, and poverty. So now I'll put a chart or statistics somewhere in here, but depending on how much you guys know or may not know about poverty, obviously when a community is in poverty, it makes it difficult for them to make good decisions, not just nutrition but overall, right? Saving money, right? Creating generational wealth, things like that, which I know that's it's another topic for another day. But for nutrition, when you live in poverty, chances are you may also live in what's called a food desert. Now, you don't know what a food desert is. It's essentially a place where it's an area where there's no real access to nutritious foods. Like it's an area that may not have, a local fresh market or, an international market or any kind of like real market for you to go and get nutritious foods, for you to get the fruits, veggies, and even like lean and healthy meats and stuff like that that your body needs for nourishment. Oftentimes that is the case that faces Black women. But, you know, in general, right, for women, you know, regardless of color, you know, if you're at a reproductive age, obesity has effect on you and your ability to essentially get pregnant, or maybe even if you do get pregnant, obesity can cause complications. Now, again, I'm probably not saying anything that a lot of women don't already know, but again, I don't like to assume things. You know, there may be somebody out there who doesn't know what it is that I'm about to say, or maybe hasn't really even thought about it. For obesity and its, you know, effects on women in their reproductive stages, there are a few things that can happen. So I'll go over each point. The first one I wrote is gestational diabetes. That's basically, you know, hypertension, high blood pressure during pregnancy. So of course, as you can imagine, right, as a woman, if you're pregnant, that doesn't just affect you, it's going to affect, you know, what you have growing inside of you as well. All right. So I already talked about the correlation between diabetes and obesity. All right. And of course, hypertension and obesity as well. There's correlations to all of that. I think I spoke about that in a previous session where I pretty much talked about diabetes the entire way. So, and hypertension, there's a video on that as well. This is just a reminder, okay, of what can happen, you know, if you're in an obese state and you're that state for a constant period of time. This is what can happen to you, you know, should you decide to bring another kid into the mix.
Now, unfortunately, right, after shooting this video, I had just realized that as I was in the middle of explaining preeclampsia, the microphone died. Preeclampsia is essentially you know, hypertension as well as protein in the urine, right? Those are all risk factors, of course, for women who are obese, right? Pregnant women specifically that are obese. Now, next we have hormonal imbalances. So with this one, you know, of course, with obesity comes a higher BMI, right? High BMI tends to equal hormonal imbalances. Reason being is because the excess fat cells tend to produce excess estrogen, right? And what can happen in those cases is it can end up disrupting the ovulation process as well as even the menstruation process. Okay, so you don't really want those either, because of course, you know, if you're in the reproductive window, right, you're in that age group, you know, you could end up, you know, having trouble getting pregnant. So, you know, when those cycles are disrupted, it can cause you some trouble trying to get pregnant. Now, the next thing I have here is you could be looking at increased risk of PCOS. Now, I imagine that most of my women out there listening already know what this is, but, you know, that's the polycystic ovary syndrome. You know, when you have cysts in your ovaries, right? Now, being obese, I'm going to say, you know, I probably should have said this, you know, before I went into this, but being obese, right, is just simply a risk factor. You know, it's an important one, but you don't have to be obese in order for you to have PCOS specifically, you know, or any of the other things that I've mentioned so far. So, you know, it's simply a risk factor. Okay, there are others. There's genetic factors, environmental factors. There's other things that do come into play. So obesity is not like the end all be all, but since we're speaking about obesity currently, you know, those are the issues that, you know, we're focusing on, the issues that obesity can exacerbate. PCOS can essentially be one of those issues that obesity does exacerbate if you already got it, or can put you at risk for getting. Next thing is excess androgen levels. Now, if you are familiar with androgen, it's not necessarily something that women typically produce, because androgen is that's the male hormone. Excess androgen levels can also disrupt your ovulation process and even the menstruation for that matter. So make sure you maintain a healthy weight, eat the right foods, you know, do everything that you should be doing, right? Anything helps. The last thing I had here in this bullet, you know, on this board, you can also increase your child's risk of being obese in the future. So essentially, like I said, there's different factors that go into things, right? When it comes to your child, you see, there's environmental factors. Simply put, like the probability of your child becoming obese, you know, due to that child having obese parents, it is a little high. But again, environmental factors come into play. So if just because you're an obese parent or that child has obese parents doesn't necessarily mean that child will be obese. That can be changed. Okay, that is something that is not necessarily a constant, that can change, right? So, as a parent or parents, okay, if you feed, your children the nutritious foods that, they need in order to grow, to help them grow, because of course they don't stay children forever. So you feed them the nutritious foods they need to help them grow, then, of course, you lower the risk of obesity for your child, which is especially important because, I'm going to go into a little bit later, childhood obesity and how that's on the rise. Next thing I have here is, I want to talk about Iron-Deficiency Anemia, which is something that women and children specifically face, right? So approximately 130,000 women suffer, and children, that is, they both suffer from Iron-Deficiency Anemia. So now if you're not familiar with Iron-Deficiency Anemia, I had went over that in my trace minerals video. Iron is a trace mineral. It happens to be a mineral that your body only needs in small amounts, but it's still a mineral that the iron specifically is the mineral that your body needs the most of over all other minerals, trace minerals. So Iron-Deficiency Anemia essentially is where your body is not getting the iron it needs to produce hemoglobin, which is the protein that helps carry and transport blood to the tissues. That's bad enough if it's just you as the woman experiencing Iron-Deficiency Anemia, but imagine you're pregnant and you're going through that as well. Iron-Deficiency Anemia for a pregnant woman, to a child, can essentially cause neurological degeneration, so there's underdevelopment there, as well as muscles and, other physical traits and even cognitive traits. Not getting enough blood to the tissues has, some long-lasting effects. So you want to make sure that you are getting your iron. In case you forget where the most common sources of iron come from, any type of meats, right? And typically red meat has the highest content of iron, but you can still get iron from whole grains, certain whole grains, and from fortified foods. An example that comes to mind would be like egg beaters, egg whites, because I eat that every morning for breakfast. So egg beaters, egg whites has the iron in it. It has a decent amount of iron. That might only be a problem for you if you're a vegan, but if you're a vegetarians still typically eat eggs and even some seafood, which unfortunately for vegans, right, if you're a woman and you're a vegan, that's not to say that you don't get your minerals in and you don't get your vitamins, but it can get a little harder for you without some sort of supplementation. There are foods that can do it, but it's for people who don't have a problem eating meat, it comes easy to them. So just be mindful. You want to make sure you get your iron in you, especially if you're a pregnant woman. It's bad enough by yourself, but being pregnant, it's pretty bad. Now we have women being at risk for B vitamin deficiencies. There's certain B vitamins, like you got your riboflavin, your niacin, you have your pyridoxine, and which I believe is the B6. There's like 3 different pyras, right? Pyridoxal, pyridoxine, and pyridoxamine, if I'm not mistaken. So vitamin B6, there's B12, B3, B2, B1, thiamine. Basically, your B vitamins is important for metabolizing the energy that you need in order for your muscles and your nerves. And also B vitamins protect against neurological degeneration. Imagine, if you're a woman and, by yourself, again, pretty bad. But if you're pregnant, it's even worse. Okay, you're pregnant, you're not, your baby essentially is not gonna develop the way that it should. So a little bit of a reminder here. Iodine, it's a trace mineral that is very much essential, especially if you're a pregnant woman. Now, you want to be careful about under-consuming, but you also want to be careful about over-consuming. What can happen is you could get what's called goiter, all right? I spoke about that in my trace minerals video, but goiter for pregnant women, though, can end up so severe, you can restrict your infant's airways. Now, I want to move over to the children's side. That's what I had on the right side of the board up until, my mic had decided to die on me. just decided to pass away and just go into an early grave. But approximately 3 million children, they suffer death from undernutrition or malnutrition before their 5th birthday. And this especially is true for developing countries, right? Maybe not so much the US. I mean, it does happen in the US because there's still poverty here and all of that too. And I'm about to touch on that also being the reason for children not getting the nutrition they need. But, you know, it more so happens in developing countries, right? So children can still face, you know, underdeveloped conditions like cognition, right? Underdeveloped cognition abilities and physical abilities if they're not getting the vitamins they need, which translates real nicely to when I said, you know, when I was on the women, I was talking about, you know, y'all as women being pregnant or in the reproductive stages. You know, that stuff can have an effect on the children that you have or that you may think about having. Now, that's why essential vitamins and nutrients they're important in childhood, okay? Because as we know, children don't stay children forever, right? They grow, okay? They grow, you know, usually they'll grow, they'll get height to them, maybe they even get some size, right? And of course, their bones definitely don't stay in the same condition that they were when they were children. Bones got to grow, they got to get stronger, but of course, in order for that to happen, a child's body needs help with that. For bones and for teeth, most of y'all know calcium and vitamin D. That's the vitamin and the major mineral, calcium, that helps with calcification of, you know, your teeth as well as strong bones, right? Bone mineralization. And I believe phosphorus is another one. Phosphorus it helps with bone mineralization. It helps aid in that too. But calcium is the one that's the most important. There's other vitamins too, of course, B vitamins to help them metabolize energy for muscle contractions and stuff like that. You know, helping cognition, so helping children be able to focus, right? Things like that is all important, you know, because when children are in school, you know, and they're looking at a teacher, you know, stuff like that, they got to be able to focus, right? So my session 103, A through D, talks all about the vitamins and the minerals, the water soluble, fat soluble, major minerals and trace minerals. Even myself, I have an Excel spreadsheet that I keep on my devices because even I don't remember them all, right? And I especially don't remember every last toxicity or deficiency disease. You know, I don't remember them all, so I've created a cheat sheet for myself too. But the videos are out there for you though, if you're trying to look for what it is that, you know, your body needs, as well as, you know, what your children are going to need to help them grow and to help you maintain your health. Now, the next thing I wanted to go into is, even for children, poverty and undereducation, or basically lack of education, and even some cases miseducation. That's the reason that is still the main cause for children as to why they don't have proper nutrition, why they go through malnutrition and even undernutrition. Okay, that's the first place to start. We got to educate our kids, right? And of course, if you live in poverty, I get it. You know, your circumstances is not that great. You know, if you live in a food desert, I get it. You know, but you still want to do the best you can, right? That's why the last thing I had on the board also was a call to action for parents, but not just for parents, right? If you have any kind of involvement in a child's life or in children's lives, then, you know, essentially that call to action applies to you as well. I mean, you know, we're all in this together, you know, people like myself and those of you that are around my age or what have you, or even, you know, on the older side. There's always a next generation, right? The generation behind us, they see what we do, and then they're going to come in and essentially, you know, follow our lead and make even better decisions than we did, right? That's what we want them to do. But it starts somewhere. Usually it starts in the home first. So that's why I said at first, call to action to parents. Teachers too, I mean, they're not exempt, but it starts in the home, and that's the parents' job. So, you know, parents, y'all got to do a good job. You got to make sure you do a good job of modeling to your children, you know, what healthy foods and nutritious foods look like, you know, because if they see you eating a bunch of junk and they're not really seeing you care about your health and stuff like that, they're essentially going to follow the same lead. It starts in the home. You know, we got to educate the kids, because miseducation or lack thereof is a big part of why, you know, a lot of kids are undernourished, or even, you know, it's still a big part of the reason as to why childhood obesity is on the rise too. So, you know, we gotta we gotta call to action. We have to do what we can to contribute to lowering child obesity, as well as, you know, lowering undernourishment of children. More fruits and veggies, more whole grains. You know, eating meats is fine, but you want to make sure you eat lean meats, right? So when you go to the grocery store, maybe pick from like if you get chopped meat or turkey, ground turkey, make sure you're picking from, like, you know, the 93.7s, or even, like, I think chopped meat, I don't know if turkey's got this, but I know chopped meat has 96.4. Basically what that is, it's the ratio from lean to fat, right? Lean to fatty content. So when you see 96.4, that means that meat is 96% lean, about 4% fatty. Same thing with 93.7. That meat is 93% lean and about 7%, you know, fatty content in it. As you go lower, there's 85.15 and 75.25. You want to make sure you stay away from those, because of course the fat content starts to jump and the lean content, you know, decreases. So you want to make sure you're eating lean meats if you're eating good, you know, if you're eating meats, right? You want to make sure that you're, like I said, whole grain. So that's going to be, maybe choose from, if you cook rice, maybe cook like brown rice or black rice, wild rice, maybe some quinoa if you're into that. Quinoa is a pretty good alternative to rice. And that's not that white rice is bad for you either, but, you know, anything in overconsumption definitely is. Rice is a carb, right? And carbohydrates is what our body needs. You know, it's our biggest source of energy. And unfortunately, with carbs, if we overconsume, it can convert over to fat. Whatever excess is in our body can convert over to fats. So you definitely want to make sure that, you know, you're making the choices that you need, you know, maybe getting your kids active too. And if it's nutritious foods, it'll give them that much more energy, and they'll definitely notice a difference. And so will you if you decide to take that on. If you know, do that with your body in your life, make those changes. Because again, model for our children, they got to see us do it, right? We can't expect our children to do it themselves. So that's pretty much it though for this video. If you liked it, you know, give it a like, you know, comment if you feel necessary. I check them periodically. Subscribe if you feel inclined. Hit that notification bell so that you know when I release a video. Again, sorry about the whiteboard. My mic died. So luckily I had to, you know, screenshot of what I had on the board, and then I just meant I had to ad-lib a little bit. Happens, I guess. But thanks for tuning in, and hope y'all have a great rest of y'all day. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.